Okay, folks. Along the west coast of Mexico, high up on the hills, grows a gangly weed.
That's for 12 feet tall.
I know.
12 feet tall.
How tall this thing is.
And it has its history goes back all the way to the Aztecs. That last Aztec king was Montezuma. And that he would bring poinsettias into the city because they represented purity. Now, Mexico City, it's too high in elevation where it can't actually grow poinsettias, so they would have to bring them in. I mean, we're going way back, folks.
Way back.
And so these caravans, and they would use the red bracts. Now, bracts, we're going to have to describe that. Bracts are a modified leaf. The actual center, if you're looking on YouTube, which we ask you to please subscribe and please rate us. We would appreciate a 5-star rating, and so would our sponsors. Please, you'll get to see the poinsettias on YouTube where the actual center of what we consider and we'll call the flower is actually the real flower. It's where you see the pollen where they turn yellow, but all of the pink, and like we have orange, pink, we have the tapestry, which has a variegated leaf. We also have pure white, Poinsettia Pure White, which is a relatively new variety. And it's all modified leaves and bracts. So they all have the same color flower. So what color is a poinsettia? What color is a poinsettia flower? Yellow. But what you're seeing that is colored are the leaves. So just had to add that. So 14th to 16th century, the sap, like if you've ever broken a poinsettia, it will weep a white sap. And it actually was used to control fevers and also encourage breastfeeding. And that the leaves or the bracts of the flower were used to make dyes. And the first known documented poinsettia flower drawing was in 1780 by a Spanish botanist. So we're going back. It's an amazing plant. Joel Robert Poinsett. He's from South Carolina. He was a politician who lived from 1779, so right after the Revolution, to 1851, just before the Civil War started in 1861. So, who is this guy? Joel Robert Poinsett, again, born in South Carolina, evidently had some money because his father was a physician, and he went and he sent him abroad to England to medical school, and he was in a military academy also while in England, and that was about when he was 17. Yeah. And the whole idea was his father wanted him to return to become basically a lawyer. Anyway, to study legal studies in America. But in 1801, now he's 22, he returned to Europe in 1801, and he spent most of the next 7 years traveling through Europe and Asia. But so 1812, here you go, Julio. It's a, what was this? What war started in 1812?
Gosh. I was never good at it.
The War of 1812.
War of 1812, yeah.
All right. Which was Britain and the United States. And who was the hero? Anyone? Lexi, anyone? Hero, War of 1812?
Oh, I think I know. Was it Andrew Jackson?
Yes! Bing, ding, ding,
I would
ding,
have never
ding.
gotten that.
Yeah, you must have gone to prep school. Anyway.
Actually, I did.
Yeah, I know you did. So when the tensions began with Britain and the United States, because you got to think, it's like, you ever see commercials and stuff, and you, like, it hasn't been that long for, Iraqi freedom and all of those wars. And if you think about it, 1812, if you go backwards, it's only like 30 years from the time the revolution was over. So, again, just saying, So in 1810, James Madison told him to, guess what? You're going to be the envoy to South America. And he needed to, basically, it turned him into a spy because he posed as a British merchant to collect intelligence on Chile. And because there was, again, it was a revolution, wanted independence. Chile wanted independence from Spain. Stay with me, folks. This has to do with the poinsettia, I promise. So he departed from Chile when things got a little, precarious, let's say, for him. So he ended up in Argentina, and then he stayed and returned in 1815 back to the United States in Charleston. 1816, Poinsett became interested in politics. Lawyers, right? Anyway, lots of politics going on right now in our country. Anyway, it seems like it always has been. So he returned to South America in 1817. They wanted to, James Monroe wanted him to, but he said, I'm not going this time. I'm not going. And then he became a congressman, and he was a congressman for 4 years. And then 1822 to 1823, he visited Mexico on a special diplomatic mission for President Monroe. So they finally hooked him into going. And he published a book about his journey, Notes on Mexico, and it's full of details about the culture, scenery, and the plants. Okay, we're getting there. Yeah. John Quincy Adams, a scholar and diplomat himself, became president. No doubt impressed by Poinsettia's knowledge of the country, Adams appointed him the U.S. ambassador to Mexico. All right, so this guy's, what do they call it? The deep state? I don't know what they call it now, anyway. So he served for 4 years in Mexico. And think about it, what's going on? Mexican Revolution, right? The Alamo, all that kind of stuff going on. So he is the ambassador, and the situation was, to say the least, unsettled. So Poinsett was often accused of, whether he was or not, was labeled basically a spy and a scourge. And they actually, they Mexican people, they had a name for him, and that when you became a persona non grata, that Mexicans asked him to leave. They said, get out.
Wow.
And they called, and the Mexicans even coined the word poinsettismo.
Whoa.
Is that, am I saying that right, Julio? From your Spanish? You following along?
Yeah.
All right. And it basically means that he's intrusive behavior and that you're a spy, pal. John Quincy Adams told him to stay, though. Say we're unwanted. And you know why? Politics. Okay. Southern guy, right? Southern guy, Andrew Jackson, is running to be the president against John Quincy Adams, and he knew that he had a friend in Joel Poinsett. So he said, guess what? You're going to stay there. So he was kind of forced to stay there so that he could, let's just say, for political reasons, he didn't want him to get involved in the election.
This is spicy. I feel like we should have the what is it? The mariachi band playing the James Bond theme song right now. This is like
that's right. That's right. Hey, maybe you can work something up. It's true. I mean,
yeah.
Because so here's what happened. So during his stay, right, he wandered the countryside. So he's forced to stay there, and he found a beautiful shrub with large red flowers growing next to a road. He took cuttings from the plant and brought them back to his greenhouse in South Carolina. So in 1829, he sent the cuttings to, ready, this is what it's called, to Philadelphia at the first, understand this, the first, exhibition of fruits and flowers and plants, which was founded by the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. All right, putting two and two together, it is now known and has continued ever since to be known as the Philadelphia Flower Show. Introduced by Anne Bartram and her husband Robert, who had received some of the original cuttings the year before and was an instant hit. Now, this is the plant that grows, 10 feet tall. This is not the poinsettia that you see at Bloomer's Home and Garden, and that we're going to get into that soon. So Jackson said, okay, Joel, come on home. So he went to Washington in 1830, and this guy's amazing. And that's William Prescott, is a historian and horticulturist, was asked to give the new name to this plant. And at the time, Mr. Prescott had just published a book, The Conquest of Mexico, in which he details Joel Poinsettia's discovery of the plant. Prescott named the plant the poinsettia in honor of Joel Poinsettia's discovery. There you have it.
Yeah,
the name Joel Poinsett, spy, he political lawyer, all of these things that an ambassador. So it's amazing to think. So this guy's not done. He's not done. So he ends up coming back, and Martin Van Buren, 1837, was elected president. And he convinced Poinsett to come out of retirement and return to Washington as his Secretary of War. I mean, is there anything this guy hasn't done? He used his position to authorize an expedition in 1838 to survey the map of the region between the Mississippi and Missouri rivers. Poinsett also authorized an expedition to the western coast of North America. In 1841, he eventually retired. Why? Because he was trying to oppose, get ready folks, the secessionist movement in his state that would eventually become what we know as the Civil War, the North against the South. And he was actually a Union sympathizer. Amazing story.
Wow.
Amazing story.
It is, isn't it?
It could be a movie.
Yeah, it could.
It could be a movie. So again, the poinsettia was basically discovered by Joel Poinsett, named after him based on a botanist, because he found it, was brought to the United States in Philadelphia, where Bartram, it was the place. Bartram had been the place where you ended up getting, where they would give, remember Bartram boxes, Julio?
Yeah.
Julio and I took a field trip there. I don't know, it's a year ago, maybe
about
two.
a year or two.
And that where the Bartram boxes would go on ships and be traded back and forth. And this is before the Revolution, that he was the king's horticulturist in the state and in the United States. But that was before it was the United States. It would be the New World, I guess.
Yeah.
In any case, in America. And so all types of plants we owe for the Bartrams. And the Bartram Garden still is a garden as well as a museum today. It's an amazing place. And I have to admit,
Wait, you're cutting.
about I stole cuttings from the Franklin
I
tree.
remember that.
I did. I tried to get, I
tried.
did, yeah. I'll deny it, but I did. In any case, Bartram Gardens is a great visit if you're in Philadelphia. It's worth going over to take a look to see the historical nature of that. One of the times when they were arguing over the Declaration of Independence, and they were trying to get the southern states and the northern states to agree, the 13 colonies, and then Ben Franklin said, "Whoa, let's take a break. Let's go over to Bartram Gardens." And so they all went over to Bartram Gardens to hang out, to catch a breath, to walk through their gardens. And it's all tied into the story of the poinsettia, which it's just an amazing place, amazing story.
Yeah, it's amazing how it travels.
Yep, but we're not done. We go to Hollywood next.
The Ecke Poinsettia Ranch is named for the family that made the poinsettia popular to the masses, aren't it?
That's right. That's right. In 1920, Paul Ecke Sr. had his poinsettia ranch right on Sunset Boulevard in California, but they were grown not as a potted plant like you see again at Bloomers. They were actually a cut flower because they grew so tall. And they would take the canes of the the poinsettia and send them east by train. And it was still mostly grown for cut flower and some pot production, but the stems would have to be manipulated. They have to take the stems and carefully, if you've ever had a poinsettia, they break really easy, that you would have to bend the tall stem down and then back up to try to make it more of a compact plant. It was the science that has to take place that wasn't available at that time. So again, it was under development, and that Barbara Ecke is the name of it's actually Barbara Ecke Supreme. Now, if you can picture this, it was a variety that had a flower that was 22 inches wide. We're talking almost 2 feet. That's a big poinsettia flower, you know? So if it gives you put it in perspective and scale, that's how tall the stem would have to be. And then it would have this, great big flower on it. So beautiful, beautiful. But that was developed in 1950. In 1963, I love this story. Okay, Paul Mickelson of Mickelson, Ohio. He threw seedlings. He was like frustrated. So he just like, I'm dumping this. There are times where you just dump the tray. You're trying to do something special and it's not working. So he just dumped the seedlings in the dump pile, and he came back and the plants were still there. And he thought he had something because the plants were better and more compact, and it was a better performance. It was just what he was trying to do. And the plants were so good that they could be put in prop production, and it almost put the Ecke family out of business. It's amazing. And he also, instead of shipping large like canes, that he shipped the rooted cuttings. It's amazing. It's amazing. And what's the next story?
Paul Ecke Jr. Yeah, this is Paul Ecke Jr. He needed a nanny, right? So he got a German nanny. She would only work if they hired her.
Yeah, I'm not working for you unless you hire my husband.
My husband, yeah. You get two here instead of one. Excuse me. She hired her husband as
Franz.
Franz.
Franz Fruworth.
Yeah. And they started a hybrid program at Ecke's back in 1968. About that. They introduced more poinsettia than anyone in the world. That's amazing.
All new introductions, all new. And that, if you know the winter rose poinsettia, that's the one that's kind of small. It looks kind of like a rose flower. And that it's real small and it's kind of crinkly. That was developed in 1999 and by the same German gardener, the nanny's husband.
Thought, right?
I don't know. So the story turns. Goes to Norway. I hope I'm saying this one. Thermite Hague. Okay. And the variety Annette Hague was introduced, here we go, 1967. And it was the first variety to be considered self-branching. Okay, why is this important? Because it didn't have to be treated with chemicals. It didn't have to be manipulated in a way that it became a pot plant. It did it all by itself. And guess what? That was big money and a big threat to the Eckes. So the Eckes said, guess what? Let's be partners. Be my buddy.
Oh, he saw it.
Smart. They stopped being growers and became businessmen. And they did it again. While Paul Ecke Sr., the original Ecke, was traveling in Europe, I think everybody in our industry, you're kind of addicted. Like, when I go out and I'm allowed, I go visit gardener centers, I'll check them out, see what they're like. Ecke Sr., he was walking through a greenhouse of just some backyard grower. It was not like, a big, complex. It was somebody who just did it for fun. And he found all these branched poinsettias all through the greenhouse. on the spot, offered him $5,000 cash and created a partnership. And the reason is that these plants were from a graft. What does that mean? On the show, we have shared with you about how new plants are formed, and that how it's science. So this plant that was all in his greenhouse came from one plant, and they took cuttings from what they call a mother plant, and this still happens today, folks. And so when it's a graft, that plant retains the exact style and shape, form, color of the original mother plant. So it's a clone of the original plant. So that made all of these perfect. They didn't have to be manipulated to be compact, and it's just an amazing thing. And it was this discovery by, his name is Gregor Grootber. So he created this partnership, and this isn't that long ago. And this was all the way 1980. This is not that long ago for somebody Julio's age. I got you, Julio. Or my age.
Oh, yeah.
So here's another thing. They discovered something else. So if you grafted a poorly branched plant, so something that grew tall or had that didn't really have all the characteristics that you were looking for, and so you take that and grafted it to a well-branched plant, so something that is compact and is something that you could be sold at this store level. The way that they did this is that they found that they could get the plants. All right, this is going to get a little bit heady, okay? The phytoplasma that was transmitted from the infected plant to a non-infected plant. So what they did is that the branched plant now made the other plant a branched plant. And it was due basically because it was infected by the photoplasm that was in, and it was actually a peach disease, peach X disease, or also called spirea stunt. Like, Julio, have you ever heard of a witch's broom?
Yeah.
So the witch's broom are in trees, and like if you look at a tree and it has like a really small cluster of branches that are tightly knit together, that's basically what was happening. And so the role of this virus, and it became the standard procedure, so that if you introduce this beneficial pathogen to new poinsettia seedlings after grafting, that they become branched plants without having to do anything. And it was a secret. Nobody told anybody. And I guess it was 20 years. And of course, the secret got out because a professor from Minnesota figured it out, and there ended the monopoly for Ecke. Amazing. So, Julio, how much is the crop of poinsettias valued at?
Well, we're talking big money here.
Yeah.
250 million with 70 million plants produced.
So today, $250 million, so $250 million, with 70 million plants produced. Now, one of the main reasons why we have poinsettias, and it was all because of not Paul Ecke Sr., although he did have a lot to do with it. It was Paul Ecke Jr. Being that they were in Hollywood, they would give poinsettias to all of the newscasts, all of the movies, all of, like, the Tonight Show, Johnny Carson would end up with poinsettias in his studio, and that people started saying, hey, what's that red plant? What's that plant? I want to get some. And that's how it was done. There's an old saying, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. I was talking to my sister about that the other day. And it basically means there's one generation that starts it, there's one generation that exploits it, and then the final generation sells it.
Yeah. Money.
Paul Ecke III sold the third generation business in 2012 to Dooman Orange, but Dooman Orange, out of respect and also, I guess, branding, retained the Ecke name. So you still can get Ecke poinsettias by varieties, but it's by Dooman Orange, which I believe is a Dutch company. It's amazing. It's amazing. So all the way from Mexico as a weed now to 2012, sold to one of the biggest plant producers in the world. Amazing story.